Hello Exiles. So I'm making this video because I feel like no one else is. I don't have a great mic nor a great voice, but I do have a lot of unnoticed hints to discuss. Acts 5 through 10 will return to the origin story of POE, like a genesis of sorts. And based on the information we have so far, it looks like the stories of some of the major gods are going to be really cool. Unfortunately, based on what I've been reading on Reddit, there are a ton of players who don't even know basic history. So I've decided to take a couple of minutes to summarize some history of raid class to get everyone caught up. If you aren't one of these people, and you've read the wiki or know more about this than I do, then you can skip ahead to the discussion here. Otherwise, let's dive in. And before we begin here, I want to point out a major recurring theme to raid class history. The civilizations of raid class are all engaged in a cycle of corruption and relentless purity. I'll try to point out when examples of this occur. So we begin at the start of civilization with the Vaal, the oldest known race in raid class. The Vaal built massive structures, including the ancient pyramid in Act 2 and these annoying snake construct things. The Vaal were peaceful, but they practiced human sacrifice. Their last queen, Atziri, was notorious for this. Queen Atziri had her thaumaturgist, Doriani, sacrifice anyone who opposed her. This was because the Vaal were obsessed with virtue gems and their power, and Queen Atziri sought eternal youth using them. And for anyone who doesn't know, thaumaturgy is the use of virtue gems to augment and corrupt the flesh, and it's basically why everything's really messed up in PoE. So pages upon pages of humans were sent to Doriani to maintain the queen's youth. On one of the golden pages from the Fixture of Fate quest, we learn that a cataclysmic event named the Communion wipes out the Vaal, including the queen and Doriani. On the page, the words sleep, nightmare, and the beast are used. Centuries after the destruction, a human civilization known as the Asmiri marched upon the Vaal ruins and began an eternal empire. Their emperor, Tarkus Varuso, planted his banner upon Atziri's grave and said, "For now and forever, our eyes are open." He then began a quest to outlaw all thaumaturgy, burn all sinners, and seal all virtue gems within the bowels of the mountains. From then on, before coronation as an eternal emperor, a High Templar must vow, quote, "to care for this empire with eyes open," unquote. This eye, I suspect, is very important to the Act 5 discussion. The Vaal civilization is the first major instance of our theme. The peaceful Vaal civilization brought to ruins by corruption due to virtue gems, and then taken over by a ferocious conquest against all sinner corruption. After over 1,000 years of peace, a long line of rulers from the Frisius family ended upon Azaro. Likely due to decades of inbreeding, Azaro was impotent, ending the Frisian line. To decide his successor, Azaro designed the Labyrinth. The Perandus family seized this opportunity and used their wealth and power to make Caedus Perandus the first ascendant of the Labyrinth. Caedus' first act was to imprison Azaro in his own labyrinth. Just like Atziri, Caedus had a thaumaturgist of his own named Malachi. And just like Atziri, he sought godhood. But his reign would end quickly when High Templar Vaal banded together the help of nearly everyone not sworn to the Emperor, and many who probably were sworn, to overthrow Caedus in several epic battles known as the Purity Rebellion. They succeeded in overthrowing Caedus, but Vaal's reign only lasted 5 years. Once again, Vaal craved the destruction of thaumaturgy and all virtue gems. He was about to kill Malachi due to his thaumaturgy, but he let him live after Malachi promised to use his brand new rapture device to kill the beast, which was behind all thaumaturgy. So Malachi used the device, but instead of killing the beast, it tore a rift into its bowels, allowing Malachi to enter the rift and awaken the beast, causing the cataclysm, which killed nearly everyone if it didn't turn them into monsters. And this is where our story as exiles begins. In sum, Caedus became corrupted by the possibility of godhood through virtue gems, and so he was overthrown by Vaal, who relentlessly sought to destroy any and all thaumaturgy, who then ironically became corrupted by a possibility of an end to thaumaturgy. And so once again a cataclysm destroys raid class. So now that we have a baseline knowledge of the history of raid class, let's get into Act 5 through 10 discussion. If you only came here for the story and don't want any spoilers, now's the time to end the video. So to start with, let's go over all the evidence we have here. Ever since a cataclysmic event related to the beast occurred, Civilizations have been repeating the same arc of history over thousands of years. The civilization becomes corrupted by virtue gems. The civilization implodes in a catastrophe. A new civilization is born, which tries to destroy virtue gems. The cycle repeats for the Vaal, the empire under Kytus, and the empire under Vol. That places us right after the catastrophe due to Malachi awakening the beast. According to Chris Wilson, in its slumber, the beast has been repressing the powers of the old gods. We also know that in Act 5 we travel to Oriath and fight Templar Avarius, whom a god named Innocence, God Emperor of Eternity, comes out of. Surrounding his boss fight are several panels. These panels describe the story which was originally hinted at in a collection of art released a long time ago called Art of Path of Exile. In the hint we see a story named The Rise of Innocence. The bottom text says, "On that day, 2 were born of their mother's womb, Innocence with eyes of burning red, Sin with eyes of clearest blue." So take a second to think about that. The boy on the left with a golden aura and a clear blue eyes is named Sin, and the boy on the right with a red aura above the weltering plants is the one named Innocence. Now, based on what you're going to see in the later panels, you'll see that the auras and weltering plants are most likely not simply the art style. It's a good bet that Sin is followed by life and Innocence is followed by like death or misfortune or something. So going off of that, I'd like to suggest for just a moment that these two boys' characteristics are a result of divine intervention. Perhaps they are gods, or the sons of a god, or of 2 gods. This remains to be seen. But gods did indeed roam while these boys were just babies. In the second panel, as we can see, the mother is scorning Innocence while caressing Sin because of a dead bird in her hand. From the flowers and from Innocence's gaze, we can suspect that it was Innocence who either purposefully or accidentally killed the bird. In the third panel, the mother is feeding Sin while Innocence is getting the scraps from the ground. Now, at first I thought that Innocence was feeding the rat, but if you look closely, I think instead he's catching the droppings. And judging by his facial features and the fact that his clothes haven't changed like Sin's has, he looks very much neglected. From there we can probably guess that Innocence despises his brother. His life is much tougher than Sin's, and they appear to be total opposites of each other. The fourth panel depicts Innocence striking his brother. Below we can see gemstones lined claws which protrude from the ground, and the in-game version of these are purple, suggesting that Innocence has been corrupted by a creature or perhaps virtue gems. Also, the fish is potentially a reference to fishing, which could literally happen. From here, we can see that Innocence is pretty twisted now, and his stance suggests that he's probably a little powerful, most likely due to corruption gems. On Sin's shoulder pads, we can see that the eye symbol shown above all the panels has been struck through. From here the story gets a little murky. The panels are arranged around the room in mostly left to right order with some exceptions. So the next panel that follows along the story should be this one. Here we can see that Innocence is tied to the stake and burned alive. Out of him, a bunch of gemstones are shooting from him. I had to take 2 bent halves of this photo and align them together since we have such limited footage of the Avarius fight. But in the lower left, you can see that there are angry villagers surrounding him. The way I see it, there are 4 major possibilities here. Either he was seen as evil by the villagers and was burned for his crimes, or Sin is a prince and striking him was a crime, or he was found guilty of using virtue gems by a righteous civilization, of which the punishment is obviously death, or he was used as a human sacrifice by the Vaal, and all these would make sense for the time period. Now, if you thought that instead gemstones could be going into Innocence, in this next panel we can clearly see that the purple things are rising out of Innocence, and they're not just gems. They're kind of this giant monster thing. And we can see that Sin is looking up towards it. For the sake of accuracy, we can just call this monster thing a demon for now. Now this is where things get very interesting. We can see Sin raising his arms, but wait, where are his blue eyes? In fact, it kind of looks like he has red eyes. So Sin is raising his arms to the demon, who now definitely has creepy blue eyes and a crazy smile, and this circle thing is surrounding the demon. Now it's difficult to tell what the circle thing is made of, but to me it looks like a ring of houses. So I guess we're looking downward here, or upward? Who knows? Regardless, the demon is in a very bad spot he probably shouldn't be in, because he's lighting the houses on fire, or maybe the seal is fiery, and Sin is raising his arms up to him. This to me looks as though Sin is sealing the demon, which would suggest that the demon is the beast. Here's where everything gets even more murky and we really have no idea what's going on. From here, the story doesn't appear to go in order. The next panel is this, which also appears several times throughout the room. We can easily see, however, that a guy in red robes is raising his arms up to the sky, and a necrovigil descry is shown. Now, descries are the symbols used in POE. You may have noticed them on your armor or above your character when a mortal call activates. But from here, red flames wrap the painting, and both Sin and Innocence's gold and red glow shine from the descry. There's a lot of possibilities for what's going on here, but I suspect that this is Innocence burning everything to the ground, which we'll see a lot more about later on. The next panel is another panel which appears seemingly all over the room, which is of a struck-through circle descry in front of a purple gemstone background. But there's also this panel, which has Sin's colors and a normal descry on it. And there are also these descries depicting a man wearing a circle descry shoulder pads like Sin was, a laurel wreath like the emperors do, and emanating a gold and red aura. And here we have this panel of him seemingly all grown up, but he has red eyes. Surrounding him appears to be Sin's gold halo, with some blue things and a bit of red. So he has qualities of Sin, but he has red eyes. And honestly, in my opinion, the facial structure and hair of Innocence. To go even further, Innocence sprouts from a Varius in the trailer here in front of the panel, suggesting to us that the man in the panel is indeed Innocence. And we're not done here yet with the weirdness, because we have our final two panels here. A panel depicting a blue-eyed, red presence corrupting a gold descry, and a picture of the demon rising out of the clouds. These panels weren't in any particular order. And in front of one of these panels is a statue depicting our guy with his laurel wreath spearing Kitava. Now I'm pretty certain this is Kitava based upon the look of Kitava's feast and Kitava's thirst. And finally, at the center of this fight is this beautiful art depicting our guy with, once again, red eyes and a gold halo, trampling on people being burned alive, this time wielding a staff with an eagle perched atop of it, similar to an image we saw in the trailer. Speaking of the trailer, we also had this Pantheon picture, and here we can see that on the top we have Kitava, and if you're still unsure if it's Kitava, then notice that he has Karui swirls just like Tukohama, suggesting that he is indeed a Karui god. However, Kitava apparently makes far more appearances than simply in Karui tales. One thing that really has me annoyed at GGG is the fact that based on Kitava's feast, Kitava's thirst, and the statue, Kitava definitely has eyes, but his eyes are not being shown here in the image. And either he's looking down here and we simply can't see his eyes, or he has his eyes closed, which would have a dramatic impact on what we know about his role in the lore regarding the circle or eye descries, or the civilizations that remain loyal to keeping their eyes open. But since this image is so badass, I'm tempted to give in and say that the artist made a point to keep Kitava's eyes closed and the bottom guy's eyes open. Speaking of the bottom guy, he has blue eyes, giant wings, an upward circle descry, and he appears to be rising from the flames. Towards the middle, we can see once again that the red versus blue theme has continued with Solaris and Lunaris. Now to cap off the evidence we have, let's look at some cool items that potentially have an impact on our story. Now I know that some of these items are supporter designed items, but once you look at the art and the story of the items, it's fairly clear that there's some evidence to glean from them. So first off, we have the Brittle Emperor, whose text describes the corruption of Vaal's faith and his pursuit of purity, which shines a light on faith's vulnerability to corruption and how empires have fallen as a result. The spoiled prince here seems to literally show Sin's golden halo, and the flavor text describes Sin's lack of appreciation for his brother, whom he and his mother neglected, though this is a long shot. But wealth and power seem to show the spoiled prince all grown up, and it depicts a similar young man with a golden aura, except now with brown hair and wearing a cloak of red and blue. The reward for the card is a corrupted enlightened gem, which seems to be a contradictory theme. I honestly believe that this card is our mystery man, Innocence with a hint of his brother. The reward suggests that our guy is both righteous and corrupted, a contradiction that we have noticed in the latter panels. Kitava's thirst flavor text reads, Tukohama, Tawa, and Kitava went to the lake to fish. Tawa weaved a net to catch the fish, Tukohama built a fire to cook the fish, and Kitava swallowed the entire lake, fish and all, with a single gulp. And here's where our mystery starts getting tied together. So Kitava eating the lake likely refers to the dried lake, which is near Highgate in Act 4. Highgate is also where the beast was sealed long ago. The beast, which we now know was released from Innocence. So how do these connect? Possibly the fish. GGG has always had a hard-on for fishing, but has always kept it a secret. But clearly this fish has a connection to the rise and fall of civilization itself, due to its connection with these divine brothers. Let's keep going. Eye of Innocence is an amulet that increases the damage that you do while ignited, causes you to take damage when you ignite someone, and gives you Fire Leech while ignited. So first off, the stats to this amulet seem to be inspired by the way that Innocence was burned alive but still survived. But it also suggests that Innocence is in pain from burning others. Now I'm not sure about this one, but perhaps he sees his punishment for others as an awful necessity, and even more to the point, the text says, and so he said, let only the good meet my gaze, and no one met his. So he called down the cleansing flames and let black smoke sweep the sinners away. This sounds exactly like the Innocence we know, burning alive anyone that isn't pure for the sake of purity. Another Innocence item is Martyr of Innocence, which is once again fire-based, but now grants a vengeance skill, and has a flavor text, you have been found guilty. Let the fires cleanse you of your sins. So yep, we can definitely see how Innocence, destroys his enemies. What's also interesting is that the symbol inside the staff is very different from what we're used to. This one is what appears on Joffrey's sanctuary in Centauri's answer. Archbishop Joffrey was a Templar who despised any and all thaumaturgy. He died in the Purity Rebellion. In the Dust Dawn staff text, Joffrey states that the world is not simply black and white. It is not divided into good and evil. But black and white, good and evil do exist, and we must know how to recognize them. This connects to our guy Innocence, who is on a quest to destroy anything he doesn't deem good, expecting then that everything will simply become good over time. Obviously it doesn't work out for him, because as Joffrey has said, not everything is black and white. Finally, we have our last, and definitely our most important item. This one ties together some loose strings and creates some. It kind of unravels some mysteries and creates some as well. Sin's Rebirth is a flask which creates a smoke cloud on use, grants you unholy might, immunity to ignite, and removes burning. The text reads, and from the ashes he rose like a black cloud. The sin of one became the sin of many. At first I thought this was referring to the black clouds that the beast was rising out of. But look at the flask itself. Clear blue, with black wings protruding from it, and an upwards describe pointing from the top. Sin is definitely our bottom guy. But something else is important here, something vital. For Sin to have been reborn, he had to die. Moreover, he rises from the ashes, so he had to die from a fiery death. Thus, Innocence kills him. We can see here that the parallels between Sin sealing the demon and his picture in the Pantheon picture is uncanny. And Sin in the Pantheon picture is rising from fire. But we still have so many questions. Why does the beast have blue eyes? Why does Sin gain red eyes? Why does Innocence gain a gold aura? We don't have all the answers to this question, but we can start. So we have to remember what the beast does. According to Chris, while the beast is sealed, he draws upon the powers of the old gods, repressing them. And we know that sin is reborn as a god. So what if sin died and was reborn as a god when the beast was killed by us? Well, let's think about this. The old gods were around before the beast existed. So the old gods existed when the boys were born. Innocence existed while Kitava existed. Sin existed while sin existed? Maybe the boy Sin we see in the panels is just a character of the god Sin. After all, how can Kitava exist while our bottom guy doesn't exist? There has to be a counterbalance. Honestly, I can't figure this one out, but if any of you can, then please discuss. From what I can tell, it seems as though the boy Sin isn't literally the Sin that we see in the picture. But as for what we can figure out, it's what happens to Innocence. If Innocence is possessing Templars like High Templar Avarius, then he must have been possessing the previous notable High Templars as well. This makes sense for Tarkus Veruso and Vaal, who crave destroying all thaumaturgy. So since we mostly know the story of Innocence as a boy, we know that he becomes emperor after singeing the world, and we know the history that he repeats after death, we can piece it all together. Innocence hated his brother, partially because of his misfortune and partially because he was corrupted by the beast or virtue gems. For this he was burned at the stake, but he survived and blew everything up, including his brother. He became an awful emperor, determined to destroy anything related to the beast that took him or related to his brother, aka sinners. We don't know what happened to his first empire, but we can assume that it fell due to corruption from virtue gems, which Innocence seems to be vulnerable to. Innocence appears to be stuck in a cycle, a never-ending manifestation of his hatred of corruption and of sin, which probably explains his death cry, which seems to be a bastardization of the infinity loop, but with only one circle to represent innocence. From there, the trail goes blank. Do sin and innocence combine? Does sin possess people as well? Does sin really die? How does innocence possess people? Why is sin battling with Kitava when innocence is opposite of sin? Shouldn't purity be battling corruption? Will we continue the cycle or break it? I honestly don't know. These were all of my findings, and I've made this video in hopes that the POE community can continue the trail. Thanks for watching. I hope you've enjoyed.